$900,000. That's what my father claimed I owed. I'm Sarah Miller, 27. Breakfast should have been ordinary. Coffee steaming, sunlight slipping through blinds. But my father leaned back, smiling in a way that froze my blood. "I have a surprise," he said, sliding an envelope across the table. Inside, pages stacked with debt contracts. $900,000 due by Monday. When I whispered no, his smile vanished. Hot coffee splashed across my skin, his roar rattling the walls. "Get out." An hour later, the police arrived. But I already knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The envelope lay open, its papers spilling across the table. Every page bore a signature that looked exactly like mine. The same loops, the same hurried strokes. 37 times repeated. "This isn't possible," I whispered, my stomach twisting with dread. My father smirked, sipping coffee like nothing was wrong. "Stress makes people forget. You signed them, Sarah. They're yours." I slammed the papers down, anger trembling through my hands. "Stop it. Don't twist this on me. I know my life." 900,000, he repeated flatly. Family debts belong to family. His words sliced deeper than the burn searing my chest. I stared at him, disbelief flooding me. "Family doesn't do this." He leaned forward, eyes cold. "You've always depended on me. Now it's your turn to carry the weight." "Carry the weight?" My voice cracked. I'd carried him for years. Errands, bills, defending his gambling when whispers spread through town. And this was my reward. A mountain of forged debt. "Don't lie to yourself," he pressed. "You owe. Pay by Monday." Monday wasn't a deadline. It was a noose. "And if I don't?" My voice broke, fear creeping in. His tone hardened. "Collectors will come. They'll take everything. House, car, job. You'll lose it all with me." It wasn't a request. It was a threat. "You can't drag me down," I snapped, voice shaking. "Oh, but I can," he hissed. "You'll sink with me." His laugh was sharp, hollow. "Ungrateful. I gave you everything." "Everything?" My voice rose. "You stole, you gambled, you lied." His jaw tightened, fury flickering in his eyes. He shoved the envelope closer, its edge scraping my wrist. "You think you're better than me? You think you can walk away? You'll regret this, Sarah." The kitchen walls closed in, his glare pinning me in place. For years, he'd lectured me about loyalty, about standing together. Now he twisted those same words into chains, I whispered, almost to myself. "Family doesn't destroy each other." But he heard. His voice dropped. A growl. "Family survives together. Refuse and you'll regret it." The silence after was worse than shouting. The clock ticked. My heart hammered. His eyes never left mine. And for the first time, one truth cut through everything. Maybe I wasn't safe in my own home anymore. The burns throbbed, but older scars hurt worse. This wasn't sudden. He'd been building this trap. 4 years earlier, his study reeked of smoke. "Just sign here," he said, sliding a small loan. "It's nothing. Bridge me until payday." I was 23, still eager to believe him. He smiled. Families do this for each other. So I signed. That small loan grew teeth and late fees. He played guilt like a violin. "You're all I have, Sarah. It's just us now." He'd drop his head, voice trembling for effect. "If you don't help me, I won't survive." I patched holes in a ship meant to sink. Debts, excuses, more demands, always more. Then he started cutting me from everyone else. Friends were nosy. Relatives wouldn't understand our bond. "They'll judge you. They'll pull you away." Slowly, my world shrank to one voice, his. The gambling was the town's worst-kept secret. Nights vanished in casinos and stale whiskey. Chips in his pockets. Markers under newspapers. "Don't pry," he snapped. "I'm handling it." But he wasn't handling anything. He was drowning. Last year, I found my savings gutted. 5,000 gone without a word. "You stole from me," I said, shaking. "Borrowed," he corrected, utterly calm. "You're young. You'll make it back." The betrayal cut deeper than any debt. Then he coughed, clutching his chest. I fetched medicine, anger dissolving into guilt. He always knew how to play me, and I always fell for it. Tonight I ran to Robert's door instead. He'd been my neighbor for years. A retired teacher with steady eyes. Warm light spilled from his kitchen. He saw my blouse, scorched and sticking. "Who did this?" he asked, voice low. "My father," I said. The words tasted unreal. "He threw coffee, says I owe $1 million. Robert's jaw tightened like a locked gate. "That's fraud. That's abuse. Don't go back." Tears hit the table before I could stop them. "But he's my dad. How do I call police?" Robert set a hand on my shoulder. Right now, he isn't being a father. He's acting like a criminal. His sentence split something inside me. The catechism I'd been fed for years. Family first, loyalty always, swallow the hurt. Had left me blistered, broke, and alone. Robert's kitchen smelled like tea and safety. My kitchen smelled like ash and lies. I pressed a towel to my burns. He poured water. His eyes stayed steady. He's done this for years, hasn't he? Yes, I whispered. I thought he'd change. I thought if I helped enough, he'd stop. He won't, Robert said. Not without force. Truth settled like a stone in my chest. He hadn't turned dangerous overnight. He'd walked me here step by step. Debt by debt. Lie by lie. The trap was complete. I was finally awake. Robert lifted his phone without ceremony. Sarah, this ends tonight, he said. He dialed 3 numbers that changed everything. 911. And in that moment, I knew the war had truly begun. 15 minutes later, red and blue lights bled across the driveway. 2 officers stepped out. 1 woman, 1 younger man. Sarah? The woman asked, steady and professional. I'm Officer Martinez. This is Officer Chen. Robert nodded, repeating what I'd told him. Show us, Martinez said, and I tugged my collar. Raw burns crawled across my chest and neck. Chen lifted his camera, capturing evidence in silence. My father threw coffee, I said. He forged my name. Is he still inside? Martinez asked, eyes hardening. Yes, my voice cracked. Kitchen. Chen's hand hovered near his radio. We'll secure the scene. I followed them across the yard, every step heavier. The house loomed, my childhood walls now a battlefield. Chen knocked hard. Police, open up! The door creaked. My father feigned easy confusion. What's this about? Smooth. Practiced. Calculated. Report of assault and fraud, Martinez said. We need to talk. He scoffed. My daughter's hysterical, always dramatic. Tell them about the envelope, I said. Show them. For a flicker, his mask slipped. Then he smirked. What envelope? He asked coolly. But the kitchen told its story without him. Papers lay scattered, coffee-stained, signatures repeating my name. Chen flipped through pages, brows tightening. 37 documents. All in her name, he muttered. Exactly, my father barked, seizing the moment. They're hers. She's covering gambling debts. Gambling? I snapped. I've never gambled in my life. The officers exchanged a look, one they'd worn before. Sir, step outside, Martinez said. We'll secure the scene. His glare sliced me open. You'll regret this, Sarah, he hissed on his way out. Blood is thicker than water. You've poisoned your family. Tears stung, but I wasn't alone anymore. For years, it was my word against his. Now the truth sat in ink and burns. Martinez's notebook closed with a snap. We'll file charges. You'll need to testify. Testify sounded heavy, terrifying, irreversible. But the war began when he forged my name. And tonight, for once, this battle wasn't mine alone. Still, his voice carried from the cruiser, taunting. Court will shred you alive. No. It was only the beginning of something darker. The courthouse smelled like old wood and paper. Lives bend here under a single verdict. I sat at the plaintiff's table, palms damp. Across the aisle, my father feigned calm. His suit wrinkled, eyes twitching like cornered prey. Judge Collins struck her gavel. Fraud, identity theft, assault. Proceed. My lawyer, Miss Grant, rose without fear. 37 forged documents. $900,000. Photos of burns. Police report. Handwriting analysis. The judge scanned exhibits, brow tightening. Thank you, counselor. She turned toward my father. He smoothed his tie, voice oiled and practiced. My daughter is reckless. She signed everything herself. The assault? She spilled coffee in a tantrum. I would never harm my child. Lies slid off his tongue like silk. Miss Grant didn't blink. Then why do experts confirm every signature is forged? His jaw twitched. Experts can be bought. And the envelope on your kitchen table? He snapped. She owes me loyalty after my sacrifices. The gavel cracked. Control yourself, Mr. Miller. Every eye shifted to me. Miss Grant gave me a small nod. I stood, knees shaky, voice steadying mid-sentence. Your Honor, I never signed these debts, not once. He used guilt, threats, isolation for years. But this, I lifted the papers, is the final betrayal. He stopped being my father when he threw scalding coffee, when he demanded my life to pay for his. Gasps rippled through the room. His mask split, rage bled through. How dare you, he shouted. You're nothing without me. Order, the judge thundered, gavel slamming hard. Miss Grant slid a final folder across. Gambling records, Your Honor. Accounts in his name. funded with her information. The debt's true origin. Color drained from his face. He lurched forward, voice cracking. She lies. She wants the house, everything I built. I rose again, heart pounding. You built nothing. You stole and lied. You used me as your safety net. I won't carry your sins anymore. Whispers swelled like wind through dry grass. Judge Collins lifted her hand. Silence dropped. Enough. Evidence is decisive. Fraud, forgery, assault. This court finds probable cause. Bail denied. For the first time, fear flickered in his eyes. Officers moved, cuffs snapping cold around his wrists. Sarah, you can't do this. I'm your father. Blood is blood, he yelled, dragging his feet. Tears blurred, but I stood taller. Blood doesn't excuse betrayal. They led him away, shouts fading down the hall. I sat shaking, breath ragged and heavy. Miss Grant squeezed my shoulder. You did it. Victory tasted iron, not sweetness. But the chain between us finally snapped. I was free, at least for now. What came next would test me even more. The courthouse steps felt endless beneath my feet. Reporters pressed forward, microphones flashing like weapons. How does it feel testifying against your father? I kept walking. This wasn't their story. It was mine. Robert waited by his car, arms crossed. He didn't ask questions, didn't push. Just one sentence. Are you all right? I laughed, a sound half sob, half breath. I don't know, but I'm free. For weeks, aftermath unraveled piece by piece. His accounts frozen. Debts tied to his own name. The house secured as mine in court. Collectors stopped knocking. Silence settled like a gift. Nights were hardest. Guilt crept in like smoke. Blood is blood, his voice echoed. Had I betrayed him, or had he betrayed me? I pressed my hand against fading burn scars, and remembered the truth. He struck first. Robert visited often, steady and unshaken. You're not broken, he said. You survived. I reclaimed the kitchen. Scrubbed floors, repainted walls once stained by coffee and lies. Opened curtains wide, letting sunlight flood in. For the first time, the room felt safe. Not a battlefield. A home. One morning, Miss Grant called. The restitution order came through, she said. He'll repay damages after he serves his sentence. Irony stung sweet. Month by month, he'd repay what he scarred. I set the phone down and breathed. The silence belonged to me. The chain finally fell silent. For so long, I lived in his shadow, carrying debts, guilt, and bruises that weren't mine. Now, with truth exposed and bars between us, peace returned. Not perfect, not total, but real. I'll never forget the father I once believed in. But belief almost destroyed me. Love without respect is a knife. So I choose boundaries, and I choose myself. If you've faced this, you're not alone. Tell me in the comments. Sometimes walking away is the bravest love of all. Love, respect, and freedom run deeper than blood.
It started with a phone call on a gray February morning. My mom, Darla, had her usual upbeat tone bright, rehearsed, a little too smooth. Your dad and I were thinking, she said. We've got the new downtown unit sitting empty. Why don't you move in? I didn't say anything right away. I'd been hunting for a new place for months. My current apartment had a leaky ceiling and a roommate who ate tuna out of the can at midnight. A quiet space near work sounded like heaven. I asked what the catch was. No catch, she said quickly. Just cover the basics utilities. Keep it clean. Maybe chip in a little for wear and tear. It's better than renting to strangers. And we trust you. She paused, letting that word hang. Trust, my father. Emmett, followed up by email. He called it a family-friendly arrangement. Minimal rent, flexibility, a stepping stone. He even included a short lease agreement, 6 months, renewable, informal. I skimmed it, signed, and moved in 10 days later. The apartment was sterile at first. White walls, tall windows, the kind of place that looked expensive but unloved. I bought a mattress and slept on the floor for a week, each paycheck. I added something: a couch, shelves, a real desk. I chose soft lighting, thick curtains, small plants that wouldn't die in one season. I painted one wall a muted teal, hung 2 framed prints, and began calling it home. Every receipt went into a folder habit. Not paranoia, just something I did ever since college, when I learned the hard way that even family favors can come with fine print. My parents came by once in a while. Emmett would nod in approval. Darla would smile like she'd been right about everything. It finally feels lived in. She said, You made it beautiful. I made it mine. Until the day I came home to a voicemail from Darla, chirping. Just a heads up, Bran's moving in for a little while. He's had a rough patch. I replayed the voicemail 3 times. Darla's voice was as cheerful as ever, like she was inviting me to brunch. Just a heads up, Bran's moving in for a little while. He's had a rough patch. No details, no timeline, no question mark at the end. It wasn't a request. It was a done deal. I called her back immediately. She picked up on the first ring. Chipper. Hi, sweetie. Got the message, Mom. What do you mean, Bran's moving in? She tisked softly. Rhea, don't make it dramatic. It's just temporary. He needs a little support right now, and you have the space. I work from home. I said, I'm here all the time. This isn't some spare room in a basement. He won't bother you. He's really trying this time. I didn't know what trying meant. Bran had tried reselling sneakers, day trading crypto, dog walking, and something involving NFTs. All of it lasted a few weeks, then fizzled out into late mornings and loud music. My jaw clenched. I just wish someone had asked me. I said, Oh, honey, you're so good at handling things. You've always been the stable one. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. That phrase the stable one used to feel like praise. Now it sounded like permission to be taken for granted. Bran showed up 2 days later. Unannounced. I was prepping lunch when the buzzer went off. He didn't wait for me to answer. Just bounded up, arms full of frozen pizza, 2 duffel bags, a monitor under one arm, and a gaming chair dragging behind him. Yo, he said. Like we'd planned this. This place is sick. Mom and Dad said it's cool if I crash here. I stood there, spatula in hand, watching him set his stuff down without even asking where. He left his shoes in the middle of the floor, opened the freezer, shoved in his pizzas, then dropped onto my couch like he belonged. He didn't ask about rent. He didn't offer help. He didn't say thank you. That night, I went to bed listening to his game headset through the wall, thinking about how fast a home becomes something else entirely. By the 3rd morning, I was brewing coffee with noise-canceling headphones on. It was the only way to drown out Bran screaming at his teammates over some first-person shooter. His voice cracked through the wall's trash talk, laughter, the occasional slammed controller. Every hour felt like a reminder that the apartment wasn't mine anymore. Not really. I tried to keep my routine intact. Morning stretch, pour over, meetings from the kitchen table, but even that became a minefield. Bran had turned the living room into his personal battle station. 2 monitors, LED lights, cords snaking across the floor. My coffee table pushed against the wall. He needed space. Apparently, when I stepped into the room during his break and said, calmly, Hey, is the living room going to be your setup long term? He didn't look up. My room's got terrible Wi-Fi. Out here's faster. He said, Also, not enough outlets in there. You got, like, a surge protector. It wasn't a question. It was an expectation. By the end of that week, my boss had asked twice if I could control the background noise. Once during a client call, someone asked if I was working from a college dorm. I laughed. Sort of. One night, I finally asked, Hey, rent's due this Friday. Are you planning to contribute something? He didn't even pause the game. Oh, nah. Mom and Dad didn't say anything about that. They said I could stay here. They didn't mention rent, I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. Nah, I figured it's like, you're already covering it. Right, like part of the deal. I stood there for a moment, not angry, not even surprised, just stunned by how easily he'd assumed I'd pay for everything without question. Like that was my role, his safety net. I started keeping a notebook after that, just small things. Dates, incidents, every little moment that chipped away at the walls I'd once called home. I didn't know exactly what I was documenting, but something in me knew this wouldn't fix itself. It started with the olive oil. I was making my dinner when Bran wandered into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and muttered, We're out of olive oil. I didn't look up from the stove. Yeah, I noticed You should probably grab more, he said, like he was placing an order at a cafe. You mean we should grab more? I asked. He blinked, caught off guard. I thought you handled that stuff. That stuff. As if groceries just appeared. Like oxygen. As if I was the default supply chain manager for this apartment simply because I bought the first round of things before he arrived. I didn't argue. I just made a note. And the next morning, when the paper towels ran low, he sent me a text. Out of paper towels. Can you grab some after work? No, please. No offer to split the cost. Just assumption wrapped in entitlement. That weekend, I called Emmett. I didn't yell. I laid it out. I told him Bran wasn't contributing, that he'd taken over the living space, disrupted my job, and treated me like a live-in assistant. There was a pause on the other end. Then, look, Rhea, you're doing well. You've got a good job. You're stable. He's struggling. So, I carry the difference I asked. You're not carrying anything you can't handle. I nearly laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was expected. Later, Darla followed up with a text. He just needs time. You're so good at holding things together. This won't be forever. No one had asked me if I wanted to hold anything. They'd just put it in my arms. That night, I looked at my receipts folder. I wasn't sure what I was looking for yet, but I knew I was done pretending this was balance. They picked a cafe with exposed brick and overpriced omelets, one of those places they used to take me to during college visits to remind me I was doing well. I thought maybe this was their version of checking in, or finally asking Bran to pull his weight. I should have known better. Darla smiled as she stirred her tea. We've been thinking about the unit. I set my fork down. Emmett jumped in. It's a prime location. We could be earning a lot more from it, honestly. The way you've made it look, it's practically turnkey. Darla beamed. You've really brought it to life. Sweetie, it's beautiful now. I waited. We've been considering adjusting the arrangement. Emmett continued. Nothing crazy, just bringing the rent more in line with market rates. Adjusting, I said, doubling it. He said plainly, we figured it's fair. Bran's still getting back on his feet, and we can't afford to keep giving the place away. I stared at them, unsure whether to laugh or walk out. You're asking me to pay double, I said, so that Bran can live there for free. Darla shifted in her seat. Well, he's struggling. You're not. And you've had a good deal for a long time. This just brings things back to neutral. Neutral. As if I'd been cheating them all along by paying what we agreed. You can always move out if it's too much. Emmett added. We'd understand. They smiled, like they were offering me options. That was the moment it clicked, not just that they were siding with Bran again, but that they expected me to feel grateful for the chance to be taken advantage of politely. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I finished my omelet, paid my half, walked out into the rain without a word, and when I got back to the apartment, I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder labeled Home, and started counting. Every receipt, every purchase, every single thing I'd paid for to turn that space into a place worth stealing. I didn't start out with revenge in mind. I started with a spreadsheet. One column for the item, another for the price. Then date of purchase, store, receipt folder location, the couch, the bed, the lamps, every fork, every towel, even the stupid little plant Bran knocked over and didn't clean up. I pulled photos from my phone before and after shots from the day I moved in. Empty room. Full room. My work. At first, it felt like overkill, but the more I listed, the more I remembered. The day I hauled that bookshelf home in the rain, the exact shade of blue I picked for the curtains to soften the afternoon light, the way the rug muffled noise during Zoom calls. It wasn't just stuff. It was the life I had built. Piece by quiet piece. I added everything. The rug, the curtain rods, the coat hooks, the shower caddy, the underbed storage bins, even the little felt pads I stuck under the chair legs so they wouldn't scratch the floors. Every detail had come from my hands. Not theirs. Not his. I printed copies. I cross-checked serial numbers on receipts. I took photos of each room, wide angles and close-ups, time-stamped and backed up. If anyone asked what was mine, I'd show them. If they accused me of taking what wasn't theirs, I'd prove it. Then I booked the truck. Not a moving company, just one of those rental box trucks you pay by the hour. I chose the biggest size they had, just in case. There was no announcement, no warning. I went to work each day, ate dinner, slept, let Bran blast his games and dirty the counters. I smiled when he asked me to grab more trash bags. But behind my closed door, I folded cardboard boxes like someone rehearsing a goodbye. The truck arrived at 8:45 sharp. I met the driver downstairs, signed the papers, and backed it into the loading zone. No one stopped me. No one questioned it. I took the elevator up alone. Keys in one hand, checklist in the other. Bran was still asleep. I started in the living room, unplugged the TV, coiled the cords, wrapped the remote in a towel. The rug rolled easily. The shelves emptied into plastic bins I'd labeled the night before. Everything had a place. Everything had a record. Next was the bedroom, my mattress, my frame, the lamp I assembled on my first night there. Kitchen after that. My plates, my utensils, even the drawer organizer I bought at Target after measuring the space twice. By the time Bran shuffled out in pajama pants, rubbing his eyes, the coffee table was gone. The LED lights he'd strung around my shelves flickered once, then died when I unplugged the extension cord they were leeching off. He blinked at me. "What? What are you doing moving?" I said. His face contorted. "Wait, like, for real? Right now? Yeah, today." He glanced around, saw the bare patch where the couch had been, the stacked bins, the blank wall where my framed prints once hung. "You're really taking everything I didn't answer." I wrapped the toaster and slid it into a crate. He followed me as I lifted the last kitchen box. "What am I supposed to sit on?" I looked at him for the first time that morning. "Figure it out." He didn't follow me after that. By noon, the apartment was empty, not trashed, not ruined, just returned to its original state, lifeless and echoing. I left only what wasn't mine, which turned out to be very little. A bag of Bran's laundry, a pair of tangled earbuds, and a hoodie on the floor. I locked the door behind me and tossed the keys through the mail slot. By the time I was at the storage unit, organizing my boxes onto metal shelves, the texts started. First Darla, then Emmett, then both at once. The official letter arrived 4 days later. My parents were suing me for over $10,000 in damages and stolen property. They claimed I had gutted the apartment, removed fixtures, and compromised the intended function of the unit. Their words, not mine. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I scanned it, forwarded it to my lawyer, and opened the folder titled Apartment Documentation, Receipts, Photos, Delivery Confirmations, Emails, time-stamped before and after shots. Everything was dated. Everything had my name on it. My lawyer, Maya, smiled when she saw the file. "You're the most organized client I've had all year. They wanted to make it a fight, so we gave them one, quietly, legally, precisely, in small claims court. The room was plain, the air dry. My parents arrived looking polished but uncomfortable. Darla gave me a strained smile like we were running into each other at brunch. Emmett didn't look at me at all. Their lawyer spoke first, some stiff man in a navy blazer. He rattled off vague claims about implied agreements and communal furnishings. He waved around a blurry photo of the apartment when it was furnished and called it proof. Then Maya stood, calm, clear. She laid down a binder with over 50 receipts, high-res photos, and highlighted texts. One, in particular. She slid forward to the judge and read aloud. A group text from Emmett. "Weeks before the move-out, we didn't do a thing. Rhea made it livable." The judge raised an eyebrow and turned to their lawyer. "Do you have any documentation proving ownership of the items in question?" He fumbled, muttered something about verbal agreements. The judge shook his head. 10 minutes later. It was done. Case dismissed. Court fees awarded to me. They owed me over $8,000. Emmett's jaw was tight. Darla didn't speak. I walked out without looking back. by the next morning. Bran had started texting again from a new number. No apology. Just a string of messages blaming me for nuking the family. I blocked him before the third bubble appeared. That night, I opened my laptop, scrolled past the old apartment folder, and opened a new one. It was called Home, for real. The check cleared 2 weeks after the ruling. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell most of my friends. I just walked into a quiet open house on a drizzly Saturday morning, met a tired realtor named Leslie, and asked her one question: does the bedroom face the street? It didn't. The unit was small, older, and had scuffed baseboards and a cracked tile in the bathroom, but it had light and quiet, and no one else's name on the lease. I made the down payment with the settlement money, every dollar earned through proof and silence. I didn't borrow from anyone. Didn't ask for help. I signed the paperwork alone and slid the keys into my pocket like they weighed something sacred. The first night, I sat on the floor with a slice of takeout pizza and stared at the blank wall across from me. No TV, no couch, just stillness. I listened and heard nothing. No game yelling, no pots clanging, no second voice in the hall asking me to grab paper towels. Just my breathing, and the soft hum of a building that didn't need me to fix it. I unpacked slowly over the next week, built new shelves, bought a second-hand table. This time, everything was still mine, but it felt different. There was no performance behind it, no one to impress, just me choosing what felt right. No one asked to visit, no one offered to help, and I didn't extend the invitation. Not because I was bitter, but because this place was mine before they had the chance to take it from me. I didn't need forgiveness. I didn't want approval. I wanted peace. And now, I had it. What came next wasn't revenge or rebuilding. It was something simpler, something quieter. Boundaries. The message came on a Tuesday afternoon. I saw the preview on my lock screen while I was slicing a lemon. Graham. We made mistakes. You're still our daughter. I stared at it for a second. Not angry, just tired. It always started like that, some vague acknowledgement. A sprinkle of guilt. The soft padding of a sentence meant to feel like love. But there was never an apology. Never a change. I slid the knife into the lemon again, then pressed delete without opening the message. There wasn't anything left to talk about. They had made their choices when they doubled my rent, when they let Bran coast, when they called my boundary dramatic and dragged me into court. They chose who they wanted to protect. And it wasn't the daughter who paid on time, kept receipts, and asked for nothing but respect. A week later, I got a family group message about meeting up to talk. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it. I archived the thread and set my phone on silent. That Sunday, I installed a new lock on my condo door. It wasn't just about security, it was about finality. About building a home where I didn't owe anyone explanations, where I wasn't a fallback or a fix-it plan in disguise. I didn't leave a spare key under the mat. No one was coming. When I closed the door behind me that evening, it made the softest click. No drama, no speech. Just a choice made quietly. And this time, I didn't look back. The heat kicked on just as the sun cracked over the trees outside, humming softly through the vents. I blinked into the pale morning light filtering through the old blinds of my childhood room, the air faintly scented with cinnamon and pine. For a moment, it felt like every other Christmas morning I'd spent here, quiet, warm, expectant. I reached for my phone out of habit, not urgency. The boutique's Portland expansion was finally in motion. We'd signed the initial lease. Vendors confirmed. My numbers had been solid tight, but strong. I hadn't opened my accounts in a few days. The holidays had a way of loosening my grip. Just for a breath. The banking app took a second longer to load than usual rural Wi-Fi. I tapped in my passcode, let my thumb hover, then pressed down. The screen flickered once, then it settled. Balance, 0 points, wow. I blinked, waited. Maybe it hadn't refreshed. I swiped down. Again, still 0. I opened the business account, 0. The savings, 0. Even the emergency line I rarely touched showed nothing. My chest tightened. At first, I thought it was a glitch, a sync error, something stupid, but my hands were already shaking. I checked the transaction logs, dozens of outgoing transfers, scheduled in perfect sequence. No alerts, no warnings, all marked as verified from a known device. I hadn't logged in since the 23rd. The log said the device used was familiar, recognized. It wasn't me. It was someone in this house. I sat still, below me. I could hear footsteps in the kitchen, the scrape of a chair, a drawer opening. The scent of fresh coffee drifted under the door. I pulled on a sweatshirt, slid into my slippers, and opened the door. The hallway was lit with soft garland lights. Holiday music trickled in from the living room. Everything looked the same, but the number in my head wouldn't leave. $150,000. Gone. The kitchen was warm, loud with the usual clatter of Christmas morning. My mother stood at the stove humming along to some jazzy version of Let It Snow while stirring a pan of scrambled eggs. The scent of cinnamon rolls drifted from the oven. At the table, Mason was already seated, scrolling through his phone with one hand, sipping coffee with the other. "Morning," I said, sliding into my seat across from him. He looked up, flashed a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You look like hell." I ignored it. "I need to tell you both something," I said. My voice was calm, maybe too calm. "Last night, someone emptied all of my accounts. Business, personal, everything. $150,000. Mason didn't flinch. My mother turned slightly. "Wooden spoon mid-stir." "Gone," she echoed. "Gone," I said. "Transferred out around 1:30 in the morning. From a known device, one that's logged under my profile." Mason leaned back in his chair, stretching. He tilted his head to the side and gave me that slow, familiar smirk, the one he always used when he thought he was smarter than everyone else in the room. "Prove it. Ms. CEO?" My mother laughed, but it was uneasy. She turned back to the stove. "Sweetheart, it's Christmas. Maybe it's just a system thing. A delayed posting. You've been under a lot of stress lately." I checked the logs, I said, eyes still on Mason. It wasn't a glitch. He raised an eyebrow, then went back to scrolling his phone. Unconcerned. "You're probably just tired. Happens when you mix ambition with too many spreadsheets." I didn't answer him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I sat perfectly still and watched him. Every shift, every twitch, every sip of coffee. That smirk was all the confirmation I needed. And the fact that our mother didn't say a word to him, that was confirmation. 2. I used to tell myself he'd grow out of it. When I was 15, I bought my first phone with money I earned babysitting twins across the street. It wasn't fancy, just a blue flip phone with tiny silver stars I'd painted on the back. I was proud of it, until it vanished 3 days before my birthday. I tore through every drawer, checked the garbage, even lifted the couch cushions twice. My mom said I probably misplaced it, a week later. I saw it sitting on Mason's dresser. Same stars, same smudge near the hinge. I picked it up, turned it over, a different SIM card. He walked in as I stood there holding it. "You went through my stuff," he asked. "That's mine." "No, it's not. You're confused." He didn't yell. He didn't get defensive. He just dismissed me like I was stupid. And when Mom found out, she told me I was probably just tired and overreacting. "Your brother wouldn't steal from you." She said, "You probably left it in his room." The next year, we did a science fair together. I built the entire project design, research, poster board. He showed up the morning of and slapped his name across the front. When we won, he gave the speech. We worked really hard. He said, junior year? He convinced me to co-sign a phone contract for him just to build credit. I didn't even make it to the 3rd billing cycle before the missed payments started. When the collection calls came, he said they were overreacting. It's just a couple $100. Don't be dramatic. Every time. I forgave. Every time. I thought it was the last time, but it wasn't. It was always him pushing the line, taking what wasn't his, rewriting the story while I bit my tongue. He wasn't new to this. I was just late to admitting it. And now, sitting at my childhood kitchen table, watching him sip my mother's coffee from a holiday mug and scroll through his phone like nothing had happened, I knew this wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the most expensive one. And it wouldn't be the last unless I stopped pretending. I climbed the stairs slowly, holding my breath with each step like I was walking into a crime scene that hadn't been taped off yet. My room was still as I'd left it, throw blanket folded at the edge of the bed, charger plugged in, my laptop resting neatly on the desk like it hadn't been touched. But I knew better. I sat down, powering it on. The login screen blinked awake, waiting. I hadn't opened it since arriving 2 days ago. My work was supposed to wait until after the holidays. That had been the plan. Family first. A break. A chance to breathe. I tapped in my password and watched the desktop bloom into view. Everything looked untouched, no windows open, no recent files showing in the sidebar. I should have felt relief. Instead, I leaned forward and examined the machine more closely. The power cord was plugged into the right side port. I never used that one. It was loose. Temperamental. I always chose the left. I reached around to unplug it and felt something cold and unfamiliar. My fingers wrapped around a small silver USB drive, barely visible, wedged into the back port. It had a clear cap and a faint smudge along the edge lipstick. Maybe coral pink. Not mine. I stared at it for a second too long, then slid it free and plugged it into my older laptop, the backup I always traveled with but rarely touched. The folders looked empty at first, but I knew where to look. I opened the drive's metadata. Created 1:34 a.m. December 25, modified 1:36 a.m. Device name, Talbot Core, my laptop network local. Private IP location. Inside this house, there it was. Quiet, undeniable. I took screenshots of everything, saved a copy to my encrypted drive. Then I opened Signal and forwarded the images to Thane. Me needs you to pull shadow data off this drive. Timestamp confirms access from my system while I was asleep. Thane, got it. Don't touch anything else. Back it all up. I'll scrape what I can. I stared at the screen for a long time after the message came through. The room felt quieter than it had earlier. Not peaceful, just still. Like the kind of quiet that comes after something breaks. Not before. I backed up everything, then sat back in the chair. Numb. It wasn't just the money. It was how confident he'd been that no one would notice, that no one would stop him, that I wouldn't. By the time I came back downstairs, the living room had been transformed into the usual post-breakfast chaos, gift wraps scattered like fallen leaves, empty coffee cups on every flat surface, carols drifting lazily from the speaker in the corner. My cousins were laughing over matching pajamas. My aunt was taking blurry photos no one would ever print. And in the middle of it all sat my mother, smiling like she'd already forgotten everything I'd said. Mason stepped forward with a small box in his hand. Velvet blue with a silver ribbon. For you, he said. Voice light. Practiced. Wanted to get you something timeless. She took it with a delighted gasp. The kind only mothers can do when their favorite child is performing generosity in front of an audience. She opened the lid slowly. Inside, nestled in satin, was a delicate sapphire teardrop necklace. I stopped breathing for half a second. It was the same one. The same design I'd bookmarked 3 weeks ago after signing the lease for the Portland expansion. I'd saved it in a folder labeled After Launch. Gift for Mom. I hadn't bought it yet, wanted to wait until the contract was finalized, wanted to attach it to something meaningful. A moment earned. Now it sparkled in her palm as she lifted it, tears already blooming in the corners of her eyes. Mason. It's beautiful. You didn't have to. He shrugged, flashing his modest hero smile. You deserve nice things. She reached forward, wrapped her arms around him, and kissed his cheek. You're such a good son. I stood completely still, watching the whole thing like someone observing their own memory get rewritten in real time. I didn't need to ask where he got the idea or the money. I knew. Of all the things he could have bought, he chose that necklace, that design, that moment. It wasn't enough to take the money. He wanted to take the intention, to hand over something I dreamed of giving and claim it as his own. My hands stayed at my sides. My expression didn't change. But inside, something quiet and sharp twisted a little deeper. This was what he always did. He didn't just erase lines, he signed his name over them, recast the scene, changed the script, gave himself the final line while I faded into the background, and everyone around him let it happen. My mother held the necklace against her collarbone, beaming, asking someone to help clasp it. I turned away before I was asked to. Back upstairs. I shut the door, sat on the bed, and opened my laptop again. The screenshots were still there. The timestamps, the logs, the drive metadata. So was the weight in my chest, but it was changing. No longer just shock. Now it felt like evidence. The email came in just after lunch. A subject line I didn't think twice about updated lease agreement final draft attached. It was from my real estate attorney in Portland. Routine. We'd been ironing out the final clauses for weeks. I assumed it was a confirmation. A small piece of good news in a day that had given me nothing but silence and smirks. I clicked it open. Everything looked right at first, same address, same terms, same square footage. I scanned through quickly, half out of habit, until I got to the signature page. Owner Charge Operator M. Talbot Holdings. LLC signed Mason Talbot date. December 24th. I blinked, then blinked again. It wasn't a typo. His name was there. Typed cleanly where mine should have been. A fabricated LLC I'd never heard of before. Using our last name but not my credentials. I opened the edit history. His email was listed as the last modifier. I didn't need a second opinion. He hadn't just touched my money. He'd gone further, reaching into the next chapter of my life. The one I'd worked for. The one I hadn't even lived yet. And he'd started rewriting it in his name. I stared at the screen. Not moving. For a minute, I couldn't feel my hands. Then I opened the folder on my desktop and created a new one. Case initiated, into it. I dropped the PDF, then the metadata screenshots, then the photos of the USB, the lipstick smudge, the login times. I copied the signal thread with Thane and saved the camera footage timestamp logs I'd already begun requesting from my backup drive. I labeled everything, cross-referenced, built a timeline. It felt like a ritual, like preparing for something sacred or terrible. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even curse his name. I just worked, because this wasn't about a lease anymore. It was about proof, pattern, intent. He wanted the storefront, the name, the credit, the power. And I knew then, with a certainty I hadn't let myself believe before, that he wouldn't stop until everything I built had his name etched over mine. I closed the file, sat back, and stared at my reflection in the dark laptop screen. The next time he looked at me, I wouldn't be the quiet one. I'd almost forgotten I packed it. Tucked beneath a rolled-up scarf in the bottom of my bag was the mini-cam I'd used in the back office of the boutique during a string of late-night inventory thefts. Motion activated, time-stamped, discreet. I'd meant to install it at the new Portland location after the holidays. But now it felt like I'd brought it here for a different reason. I plugged it into my backup laptop and waited. The files loaded slowly. Each clip was 5 seconds unless motion had been detected. I scanned the thumbnails until I found the one I needed, December 25th. 1:31 a.m. The room flickered to life. Grainy footage, slightly angled, but clear enough. Mason, wearing one of Mom's robes, his hair pushed back, moving with ease. No hesitation, no sign of guilt. He sat at my desk, opened my laptop, plugged in a USB, the same one I'd pulled from the port that morning. He typed fast, like he'd done it before. Then he leaned back, smirked at the screen, and left, No audio, no shadows, no mystery, just fact. I paused the video and let the silence stretch around me. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was theft. Deliberate, rehearsed, confident. I picked up my phone and called Thane. He answered on the second ring. "You okay?" "No," I said, "but I have it. Footage, timestamp matches. It's him." He didn't respond right away. "Then we're moving forward." I nodded, forgetting he couldn't see me. "Yes. Start drafting the timeline. I'm done waiting. Copy that. Back up everything again. I'll prep an encrypted folder." I ended the call and turned back to the laptop, letting the video loop once more. Mason's smirk didn't sting this time. It clarified. He thought I'd freeze. He didn't expect me to record him doing it. I copied the clip to the evidence folder and labeled it Primary Footage, 1:31 a.m. Entry, plus USB. Then I closed the laptop and let the room fall dark again. There was no going back now. The table was quieter than usual. Most of the family had gone home. The wrapping paper cleared. The music dialed down. It was just the three of us now, me, Mason, and Mom eating what was left of the holiday roast, surrounded by the kind of silence that isn't peaceful, just dense. I cut a piece of sweet potato, set down my fork, and let my voice stay calm. "I've been thinking a lot about boundaries lately," I said. Mason didn't look up. He kept buttering his roll. "About how easy it is to cross a line when you think no one's watching," I continued. "And how some people take things just because they believe no one will stop them." He froze for half a second, barely noticeable. But I caught it. Mom reached for the gravy, eyes still on her plate. "You're always so serious this time of year," she said lightly. "I think I've just finally learned how to see things for what they are." Mason looked up then, slow and measured. "Still spiraling over your spreadsheets," I smiled, not the kind that gave anything away. "No, just realizing the difference between a mistake and a pattern." He didn't reply, didn't smirk, just went back to eating. Slower this time. Mom cleared her throat. "Can we not do this tonight?" I nodded once, still watching Mason. The air between us had changed, not by much, but enough. He felt it, the shift, the quiet that didn't come from retreat, but from readiness. He couldn't tell what I had, but he knew I had something. And for the first time, he didn't look so sure of himself. I finished my plate in silence and stood to clear it, hearing my own heartbeat steady and strong in my ears. The game had already started. He just hadn't realized he wasn't the only one playing. It happened just after 10. I was in the kitchen rinsing a glass when the knock came firm. Deliberate, no hesitation. 3 seconds later, it came again. Mason glanced up from the living room, brows furrowed. Mom was in her robe, slippers shuffling across the tile as she made her way to the front door. I followed. When she opened it, 2 officers stood outside. One held a clipboard. The other rested a hand lightly on his belt. "Is Mason Talbot present?" the taller one asked. Mom blinked. "I'm sorry, we have a warrant. Financial fraud, wire transfer abuse. We need to speak with him immediately." Mason stepped into the foyer, his usual grin halfway formed before it faltered. "What's this about?" he asked, voice still casual, but thinner now. I stepped forward and handed over the folder documents, screenshots, timestamps, footage, everything labeled, cataloged, ready. He used my device. I said, he forged my lease, accessed my accounts. The details are inside. Mason stared at me, color draining fast. "You're serious." The officer took the folder without a word, flipping through the first few pages. Then he turned to Mason. "We'll need you to come with us. Now." Mom's mouth opened, then closed again. Her eyes shifted between us like she'd stumbled into a scene she couldn't rewrite. "Mason," she said, voice cracking. "Tell them this is a mistake." He didn't answer. He didn't look at her. Just let them guide him out the door and down the steps in silence. She turned to me, eyes glassy, jaw tight. But there was no apology in her face, only betrayal. As if I was the one who'd broken something. I didn't speak. I didn't explain. I just watched the door close behind him. The morning we opened. The sun cut clean through the front windows, lighting every corner of the space I had imagined for years. Reclaimed wood shelves lined the walls. The checkout counter sat beneath a hand-painted sign that read, "Third Thread." It was quiet. No ribbon cutting, no press. Just me, unlocking the door and turning the sign to open. I didn't invite anyone from home. I didn't need them there. The quote hung behind the counter in a small glass frame, my father's handwriting. Faded, but sure. You don't have to scream to be powerful. It reminded me of the grocery lists he used to leave, the birthday notes tucked into coat pockets, the kind of voice that didn't shout. But stayed. I hadn't heard from Mason since the arrest. No calls, no messages. His lawyer reached out once. I forwarded everything to Thane. The case moved forward without me needing to show up again. Mom sent one text the week after he was taken. "You went too far." I didn't answer. Some people don't grieve the loss of a relationship. They grieve the loss of the role they played in keeping you small. I didn't miss her voice. I had my own now. The door opened. A customer stepped inside, looking up at the shelves, the soft green walls, the quiet welcome of the space. I smiled and stood tall behind the counter. She didn't know the story, but the name on the lease was mine.